Trek Beyond is the third installment of the new Star Trek series that was originally brought to us by JJ Abrams, but since recently he did some other star project that no one really saw, this movie is brought to us by Justin Lin. And this movie focuses on the USS Enterprise on a 5-year mission when all of a sudden they're attacked by a mysterious army. They crash into the USS Enterprise. It crash lands on this mysterious planet, and almost the entirety of the crew, including Uhura and Sulu, they're captured by this guy named Krall, who is played by Idris Elba, and he is the leader of this mysterious army. So now it's up to the remainder of the crew who have not been captured, them being Kirk, Spock, Bones, Scotty, and Chekhov, to come up with a plan to not only get off the planet but to save the rest of the crew. And they also team up with this girl named Jayla, who's also been trapped on this planet for a very long time. Now, I'm not a big Trekkie. I've only seen a few episodes of the original series on TV once. I've never seen the entirety of that show. I've never seen any of the original films. But I do really love the 2009 one and Star Trek Into Darkness. I really do enjoy those movies. And I knew JJ Abrams probably wasn't going to be coming back because he was doing Star Wars, but I was still a little concerned when they announced that Justin Lin from Fast and the Furious 3, 4, 5, and 6 fame was going to be doing this film. Even though I did enjoy Fast 5 and 6 quite a bit, 4 and 3 kind of sucks, I was still kind of worried how he was going to transition from Fast and the Furious to Star Trek. But luckily, Justin Lin blew away my expectations. This movie is actually really frickin' great. This is pure summer fun. The action sequences in this movie are a lot of fun, and they're also really nail-biting. And the other Star Trek movies have some really great action scenes directed by JJ Abrams, and JJ Abrams knows a thing or two about them, but Justin Lin also knows a thing or two about action scenes as well, and he did a really good job directing them in this movie. And I know people complained, oh look, a motorcycle in the trailer, Kirk is riding a motorcycle, oh this is Fast and the Furious and Star Trek, bleh. Don't worry, they explain it, and it's actually in a really cool action scene, so please don't be upset about that one motorcycle. It's actually really cool. And the visuals of this movie are really outstanding, both CGI-wise and makeup-wise, because the CGI, it's a Star Trek movie, and the other two movies look really good CGI-wise, and it's the same thing here when they're in space doing space stuff and showing the ships flying around. It does look really good, but the makeup department, on the other hand, also does a really good job, not just with the USS Enterprise crew, they have a couple aliens working there, but also for these creatures trapped on this planet. And one character who has a lot of makeup on her, Jayla, played by the girl who had blades for feet in Kingsman. I actually really liked her addition to this movie. They gave a sense of what her backstory was like. She was really entertaining, she was a badass, she knew how to take care of herself, and she also has a really cool sense of humor in there as well, which is something I would like to talk about too. Because Simon Pegg and some guy named Doug, I'm forgetting his last name, I'm so sorry, they collaborated on writing this movie, and I think they did a really good job, not only just by changing up the plot, because they kind of did that in the first two Star Trek movies. It's mainly oriented in space, but in this one, they have their space stuff, but the majority of it is on this new planet, and I like how they changed that. I also liked how they implemented their humor in there. Scotty, of course, played by Simon Pegg, is really funny. I think he's the most lighthearted part in all of the Star Trek movies, so of course he's really lighthearted here. He's the really funny guy. But they also did a good job of including some really cool character moments, including one subplot, including the characters of Spock and Bones. Now, in the first two Star Trek movies, my favorite duo in those was Chris Pine and Zachary Quino. Those two together as Spock and Captain Kirk were really good. They had really good interactions, but in this movie, the standout duo for me is Spock and Bones. And it's not just because Zachary Quino does a good job playing Spock and Carl Urban does a good job playing Bones. It's because of how their characters interact, the jokes they tell with each other, the dialogue they have. They were extremely entertaining to watch. And it's not just like 1 minute scene that just happens. No, they actually spend a lot of time together in this movie, and I found that extremely entertaining. In fact, the first thing I thought about when I was walking out was Spock and Bones' chemistry. That was the first thing I kept thinking about when walking out, because those two were extremely awesome together. Then you have Chris Pine, who's teamed up with Anton Yelchin for a little bit, and that subplot was a little bittersweet because, as you know, Anton Yelchin tragically passed away recently. Rest in peace, Anton. And seeing him on screen was just so delighting, but really sad at the same time, knowing that this is one of the last movies we're ever going to see with Anton Yelchin in it. That's really sad. But Anton Yelchin, he did a really good job playing Chekhov for the final time. He nailed it once again, very likable. Now, this is something I really need to talk about. The villain of this movie, Krall, played by Idris Elba. This is Idris Elba's second villain of the year. Earlier this year, he played Shere Khan from The Jungle Book, and I think that he, as the villain villain was outstanding, and I like that Shere Khan way more than the original, and Shere Khan is easily one of the best villains of the year so far. So how does Crawl compare? Well, the makeup for Crawl looks really good. Idris Elba portrayed him very well. The voice is really fascinating to listen to, and the way Idris Elba acts, you get a sense that he is threatening, but you don't really get a sense of clear motivation. You don't really know what's going on up here for a little while. But then when something is revealed about his character, no spoilers obviously, as soon as that happened, I was like, okay, now I really like you. And I wanted to mention this really quick. Sulu, if you have seen anything in the news recently, they turned Sulu gay, and there's some people that were upset by it. Heck, even George Takei had some things to say about that. I don't think he was a fan. But I gotta say, the way they handled it in this movie, perfect. They didn't really comment on it. They didn't make it a punchline. It wasn't a running joke throughout the movie. It was just there to be kind of heartwarming. And it actually kind of was. It was a sweet 15 seconds. So this movie's a lot of fun. The action sequences are brilliantly crafted by Justin Lin. It always had me on the edge of my seat. I was actually biting my nails at some parts, and I was like, ah, don't do that, Jackson. You're gonna ruin your fingers. This movie is visually interesting to watch, and the actors do a really good job portraying their characters, especially in this movie, because they actually do have some nice character moments. But I do have one problem with this movie, and it's just that it wasn't as impactful or deep as the other two Star Trek movies. Mainly because of one thing. They set up earlier on in the movie that Spock and Kirk actually have some struggles going on in their life. I'm not going to spoil anything about that, but it's there. They set it up, and I thought that these struggles were actually going to affect the plot of the movie in some way later on. But I was actually disappointed because they only really touched up on it like 2 or 3 times. But then when they needed to wrap everything up by the end of the movie, they kind of resolved it in a meh way. I think these character struggles should have been a little bit more present throughout the movie, because when the action scenes kicked in, and when some funny humor kicked in as well, as entertaining as that is, it made me kind of forget what was going on with these two characters. And when the end of the movie comes along and they need to wrap it up, I was just like, oh yeah, that's right, you were doing some personal struggle thing. I almost forgot. But nonetheless, this movie is pure summer fun, and I don't mean it in a negative way, like, it's just fun. This summer movie is actually what most summer movies should be, mainly because of the awesome action sequences and the great characters and the great actors portraying these characters. I'm gonna give Star Trek Beyond an A-. This movie was a lot of fun. I had a blast with this movie. Walking out of this movie, I felt excited and refreshed, because recently we've had some mid to awful movies like Ghostbusters, Secret Life of Pets, Legend of Tarzan, The Purge, Election Year, all movies that I felt meh about, except Purge. I freaking hated that movie. But now Star Trek Beyond actually makes me feel excited, because I just saw a summer movie that had me entertained throughout. It had me excited and it had good characters. I freaking love this movie, and I hope you guys go out to see it this weekend, especially if you're a Star Trek fan. Heck, you might even love it even more than I did. But if you saw Star Trek Beyond, leave in the comments below what you thought of it, and by the time you're seeing this video, I have seen the horror film Lights Out review tomorrow. And also, I'm doing a Q&A, and if you haven't left a question yet in any previous video, you can leave it on this one. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.